Excited to get started and to have this conversation. I am so honored to be in the company of these amazing, I'm out of adjectives, powerful, smart, creative, genius, my sister comrades in the fight. So thank you all for joining. My name is Kimberly Seals Allers, and I am the founder of Irth, a new Yelp-like review and rating platform for Black and brown women and birthing people to find and leave reviews of their OBGYNs, their birthing hospitals, and pediatricians. So we're just super excited to have you here. This kicks off our Earth, Wind, and Fire launch series. So we're really excited about that. Big round of applause for Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's Earth as an IRTH, so we're not violating any copyright rules. So super excited to launch this series of conversations with an important one around kind of leveraging our power, leveraging our voices, leveraging the Black girl magic with digital platforms. And so I'm super excited to have this amazing panel here this evening for this conversation. Make sure that we get, oh great, and Candace has joined, thank you. So I am going to get started with just a few quick announcements. So in this platform, we invite you to use the chat to share your comments, say hello, tell us where you're joining us from. We love to interact with you there. We also have a separate area for Q&A where we will be answering questions. So if you have a real question, pop it in the Q&A, not the chat because it can get lost, but definitely use the chat to express yourself, put your hands up, tell us what you like, what you don't like, et cetera, et cetera. So we're excited about that. And then we'll take some questions later, a little bit further on in the conversation. I encourage you all to have a look at earthapp.com to learn more about what we're doing. Download our free ebook, Birth with Irth, which has a truckload of advice and tips and ideas around how you can have a more positive and empowered birth experience. Also want to tell you lastly that on Sunday, March 14th at 3:00, we'll be having our second event. It's a powerful conversation with Diamond Reynolds. Diamond Reynolds, as you may recall, is the ex-girlfriend of Philando Castile, and she was present when Phil was killed by the police, as well as her 4-year-old daughter was in the car. And so on Sunday, myself, Angela Lewis, who plays Aunt Louie on Snowfall on FX, will be having a conversation with Diamond about the impact of police violence on Black mothers and infants. Such an important conversation. Also noting that this weekend is the anniversary of the murder of Breonna Taylor. So we want to remind you that Breonna's murderers have not been tried or brought to justice. So an important time for us to talk about these issues. So super excited about that. So please join us on March 14th. If you're not following at the Irth app on Instagram, on Twitter, please stay tuned for all the events we'll be doing this series. So getting on to our exciting event this evening with our amazing panelists, I want to start with some introductions because really there's no way to properly introduce, but I will do my best. So just to get started, I'm going to go in the order that I see. So first, I want to introduce you to Nathalie Walton, who is the CEO and co-founder of Expectful. Expectful is a go-to wellness app for growing families. Nathalie has spent the last decade in leadership roles at Airbnb, Google, and eBay. And she has an MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business and a BA in economics from Georgetown University. Please follow at Expectful on the social platforms. Nathalie, wave so everybody knows who you are. Thank you. All right. And then next, I have Simmone Taitt. Simmone is the CEO and founder of Poppy Seed Health. Poppy Seed, in case you're not aware, provides 24/7 on-demand text access to doulas, midwives, and nurses, something that's just so important, so incredible for the pregnancy and childbirth and new parenting journey. So really honored to have Simmone here. And please follow at Poppy Seed Health on all the platforms. Hi, Simmone. Yay. Okay. And then next we have Ashlee Wisdom. Ashlee is the founder and CEO of Health in Her Hue. Now, Health in Her Hue is a digital platform that connects Black women to culturally competent healthcare providers, telehealth services, and evidence-based content that centers Black women's lived experiences. And I hope you will follow along on the amazing journey with Ashlee and her co-founder by following at Health in Her Hue on all the platforms. Ashlee, say hello. And last but not least, we have Candace Frazier, who is a co-founder of Kira. And I skipped Whitney. I'm sorry, my screen is playing tricks on me. And I have to have my thing for Kira Health, which is a reproductive health platform. Come on, help me out, Candace.
Sorry, let me unmute myself. We are a women's health tech company. We do telemedicine and chat-based, focusing on college students, so women in colleges and universities where they have on-demand access to OBGYNs, primary care physicians, nurse practitioners, midwives, mental health therapists, sex therapists, 24/7.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Candace, for helping me out. And last but certainly not least, giving us all the love in the green is Whitney Robinson, who is a product manager and founder of The Renee. Whitney describes herself as a design-loving product manager who is obsessed with seeing maternal experiences improve for Black and Brown folks. She is a mom of 4, founder of The Renee, and currently based in North Carolina. Whitney holds a CS degree from Duke and is a leather craftswoman in her free time, something I just learned about Whitney. And if you want to check out her work, first follow at _The Renee, and then check out her craftswomanship at freelygiven.com. Freshly Given. Tell me out, Whitney.
Freshly given. Freshly given.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm like, the range of talents in this group never ceases to amaze me. So, and please follow Whitney at The Renee. Also, Whitney is the premier guest on my new podcast, Birthright, which is about stories of positive birth stories and healing journeys for Black women and birthing people. And if you haven't heard Whitney share about her amazing birth story for her son Elijah, and how she spent 102 days in the NICU after giving birth at 25 weeks, I just gave myself goosebumps thinking about it again. You would definitely want to check out that story. So thank you, Whitney, for being here and all the work you do, and for sharing your experience. So this is the amazing group of folks that I have the honor of speaking with for the next few minutes or so. And I think I'm going to start with some current events. So today, for those who are not on the Twitter's verse, there was a little bit of interesting information about a company called Oshun Health, or is it Oshun Medical? But Oshun, an African deity, a goddess rooted in Yoruba. So of course you would think that this was something by and for Black people, but it turns out it was 2 white women and nothing but white people right afterwards. And it was very concerning because, this idea that folks are co-opting Black culture, kind of using Black things that have meaning to us for commercial gain, and not even including us in the process. There were no Black people in leadership. It was just all bad, but it was Oshun. Now, as an update, by the time the Twitter thing finished, they had taken down their website and their social media platform. But I was just asking a question. I was just asking a question. So, but it is concerning. And so what is really the value of products digital products, platforms that are created by us and for us. What's the value there? And does it really matter? Let's start with, shall we start with Ashlee?
Put me in the hot seat, Kimberly. I was trying to process all of that. You know, what I have to say in response to that is that it's, you know, as Black women, when we're solving a problem that's like very close to home, we're approaching it with a level of intentionality that I think other people may not. And so it's important for us to be building in this space, just given, you know, the disparities in health outcomes for mothers, Black mothers specifically. And I mean, it's a space that everyone should be welcomed into playing in. Well, playing is actually not the appropriate word, but like building in, because it's a problem that all of us should be concerned about. However, I do take issue when there are people who are, you know, claiming or using the problem of Black maternal mortality to build businesses and not including Black women in that process. I think that is problematic. I'll even share, I spoke with a Black woman founder recently. She told me that, who's a physician, that a VC firm passed on her company, and then months later was sending founders from their portfolio who are white women building a similar company to her for advice. And so that's when I take issue. I think it's, if you value our perspective, if you value our insight, if you value our experiences, our painful experiences, then you should be intentional about including us in your company from the onset. It shouldn't take someone asking you a question on Twitter to reevaluate the decisions you're making in terms of leadership and how you're building and approaching your company, if you're trying to tackle this problem of maternal mortality and the disparities in outcomes. And so that's what I'll say on that before I get on my soapbox.
I love a soapbox. Nathalie, I saw you nodding. Tell me, what are your thoughts? Just in general.
Yeah, no, I saw that on the Twitter world universe this morning, and it was just so upsetting to see a predominant, I mean, not predominantly, I think entirely white organization trying to, I'm not really actually clear what they were trying to do, but I think it just talks about the need to bring inclusivity into any organization. I mean, it's kind of, to me, it's baffling, because I would think that like the last year, people would realize the importance of having diverse voices. But I guess not everyone got the memo. And so, I mean, I think, like, to your question about like, is tech, incorporating tech, like, can building tech alone solve like the Black maternal mortality crisis? And I mean, I think to that point, like, the answer is tech can make great contributions, but at the end of the day, what really matters is having inclusivity at the top in those leadership decisions, and having more Black people on boards as investors, as founders. And that's really the only way I see us making the change that we need. As doctors, I mean, it's across the entire board. And so it's so disconcerting to see an organization that missed the memo. But I mean, really the way that we solve this is for people to wake up and realize that it across every single platform, starting from probably, I mean, starting in medical school is like making sure that inclusivity and diversity, that we have representation. That's really the only way that I see change happening.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, so I've not been on the Twitterverse. I typically don't have time throughout the day. Sometimes at night I'm like sneaking on there, but I'm a gynecologist and I work in Harlem, and I see, especially my new practice setting, like I have lots of women, especially Black women, brown women, coming to see me specifically because I am a Black woman. And I think in medicine, historically, at least in the US and also globally, there has been a lot of things that have happened that have caused Black and brown people to be very distrustful of the medical system, rightfully so. And because of that history there, in our own communities, there has been a lot of opportunity for incorrect information, well-meaning, but incorrect information and different things just to crop up and grow. And I think that as we want to improve health outcomes across the board for women, across their lifespan, there has to come a place where they get good information, right information from the right sources. And that means if they have to go to physicians, midwives, nurse practitioners, doulas, whoever it is, they have to go to someone that they're going to trust, that looks like, auntie, cousin, the person that they would go to anyway. And we have to begin to form those relationships that are good and healthy. And it's not just Black women, it's women. Like I have a lot of women just come to me because, there's a difference between what they expect when they walk into the office. There's fear and hesitation, and that's why they haven't been in, 50, 11 years, to when they leave and it's like, oh, that's it. Like, so we have to form good relationships within the healthcare community, and have women have these experiences so that they want to come to the doctor. They want to seek out like expert help, expert advice. And so it's important that Black and Brown people are, it's not that others can't be included or, it's our time now, or, we don't want to get into that, but like was said, we have to have that voice, we have to have that space, we have to have those shared experiences, and we have to be able to create trust. And when it comes to tech, this is our world, especially if anything, this pandemic has taught us, telemedicine existed long before COVID. You know what I mean? We were, launching into telemedicine prior to March of 2020. But if anything we've learned is that it's not just the future. This is now. It's been now for a while. And this is how, people get information online, from social media, from TikTok. People are getting health information from TikTok. Yeah,
that is scary.
So, yeah. So, you know what I mean? We have to be able to bring them good, reliable information from sources that they're going to believe where they're at.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. I also appreciate what you're saying about telehealth, because technically, really only folks on digital platforms who cared about this issue, who were thinking about access to others, even if it was rural communities who couldn't get it, reproductive health access. The mainstream establishment was kind of resisting telehealth, mostly because they couldn't figure out how to get paid for it. Now, when the pandemic came and then all they had was telehealth, they figured out how to get paid for it real quick, didn't they? I remember once I had a phone call to change an appointment and somebody charged me for that. I said, wait, what? But anywho, the point is that some of these things were primarily because of digital movements, and then the rest of the world followed, right? Because in this particular case, the pandemic forced them to, but also the role of kind of leading the way in some of these interventions as well. Simmone, did you want to say anything on that one?
Well, I want to follow up on Dr. Frazier, because I have to say that, yes, the pandemic put telehealth and telemedicine on the radar, but it's been around for a very long time. I will tell you, though, that one of the best things that came out of the pandemic, out of such a sad, upside down world that we're living in the pandemic, is that it allowed for so many of the biases that happen when you show up in person at a provider's office, or when you're just simply trying to get information or resources that are relevant to you, how you look, how you live your life, the gender that you identify with. All of those biases for a lot of our companies, including Poppy Seed Health, that bias isn't in front of your face. And so therefore, equity and the kind of support and the kind of resources that you're looking for are all of what all of us are building, right? And that's really, really important to note. I have to say that I think especially when it comes to the Black maternal mortality crisis that we're facing, especially, there is nothing like feeling seen. Sometimes when you're not physically being seen, but you're getting the exact resources that we're producing and that we're creating for you. And so let's talk about telehealth deeply here, because you have all of these fantastic founders. I'm so excited that we're your kickoff event. I couldn't think of a better group of Black identifying women and founders and CEOs to have this very important conversation about the digital spaces that we're building in. And on one last note, Oshun, I'm not really familiar with them. I have to say I'm a Twitter neophyte. I just started my account a couple of weeks ago. I think I have one friend. Anyway, the point is that they're not the only ones. And so let's be really clear, like this is not a isolated brand new thing. This has been going on for a really, really long time in terms of companies that are creating for people where there's not one person, to our knowledge anyway, on the team that's building the thing that it's created for. So that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. I think that's really important. I think that because it has happened for so long, people didn't realize that those days were over and that we actually do know how to use Google and the internet, and we might be checking for you. Okay, so hopefully these types of things will be less frequent, but you're right. I mean, this is a thread that has existed for far too long, and probably will. But this is why I think it's important for us to keep saying nothing for us without us, and making sure that folks entering the space get the memo. Or not, then I guess they might be needing to tear down their website too. So, but I wanted to see, I felt like we jump into this big conversation around what happened on social media, but I want to feel like we share something personal. And I wanted to ask each of you about your founder story, like what brought you to this work, what drives you, what you're passionate about, how did you get here? Because I think that's an important part of what we do and what we bring to the technology that we're building, but also the ways that we're building it. Whitney, can we start with you? What brought you to this work?
Most definitely. So probably a common founder story is his personal experience and pregnancy loss way back in the day. And then just tapping into what I feel like was redemptive births. So I had several home births. Even my last, though, it didn't go all as planned. I was able to identify the good in it. Can you all hear me, or is it breaking up? Can you hear me? Okay. So
hear you.
I got into the work. For those reasons, and also just in the tech world, I felt like we move so quickly when it comes to innovation in tech, because you have to be mindful of your bottom line at all points, especially as a product manager. And so I thought, why are we doing the same when it comes to maternal health? Like, why are we having this kind of century-old conversation around the way, especially Black folks, are birthing? Talking to reproductive justice historians, like, okay, so I don't want to have this conversation with my daughter in a few years. So I got into it for that reason, like really. Not that no one else was doing anything, but not that anyone else was doing anything. And is there a possibility for me to also apply this kind of agile design, lean perspective on maternal health? So really, I jumped into it with the product management hat on and invited the people who would likely to experience the disparities to actually walk through a design framework. And that's when I knew our own experiences. I watched Black women all over the country have their own solutions. That's started.
Uh-oh, Whitney, you are breaking up. Is it just me? No, okay. Whitney?
Well, I don't want to speak for Whitney, but I can tell you in probably 5 words that Whitney not only is amazing, but I met Whitney at an event that I also met Ashlee at, that she was hosting. the Renee focuses on maternal health, as she's calling it, MX, which is so important, but in bringing together women who and birthing people who have had all sorts of experiences as it relates to loss, pregnancy, postpartum, and parenting. It was a phenomenal session, and she does them all over the country. Did I get that right, Whitney?
You did. Thank you so much for the alley-oop, because I was like, I can't see them, so I know they can't see me. So all in all, I was saying from my personal experience that those jam sessions that Simmone is talking about was an experiment to see if I can get a group of Black women who've experienced pregnancy to, within their own experiences, solve for them, right? And I've been pleasantly surprised, but not really, all over this country, and people's innate ability to make stuff happen without a medical degree, you know, with all different walks of life, all different socioeconomic backgrounds. And so just seeing that happen made me extremely optimistic about what we can do in the next 5 years. Like, I just don't want to have the same conversation about Black birth, and that I believe this is a time we can go down in history for really impactful wins.
I love that. And, you know, this idea of centering experiences, I think, is so critical to how we move this thing forward, and kind of create the new experts, which, when we know that the other kind of traditional models haven't necessarily always worked out well for us. Simmone, since you were given the alley-oop to Whitney, you want to share your founder story with us? What brought you to this work?
Sure. So I've spent the last 17 years or so building early stage tech startups, and about 13 years into doing that for some of the biggest tech companies that you've heard of out there. I had my first of what would become multiple miscarriages on my journey to parenthood. I'm still a hopeful mother, but it was that very first experience which brought me face to face with really fending for myself in a maternal healthcare system that is not set up to emotionally or mentally support you through miscarriage and loss. And unfortunately, I had a provider that was not just callous and very cold, but in a 10-minute interaction, after not hearing the heartbeat in my first trimester, sent me walking with no medical follow-up, no emotional or mental health resources. And as I was kind of crying down the streets of New York, we all have those days here, especially in New York, I took to Dr. Google, which, by the way, I do not recommend, and we do not recommend it. But sometimes that is the only accessibility point for a lot of people. And that was me that day. In about 10 minutes, I realized a very simple care plan for myself. One was getting a blood test that would show my HCG levels dropping because I was in a denial state that I had actually gone through loss. And the second was a simple sonogram that would show that I could carry in the future, hopefully safe and sound. Those were two simple things. I called my doctor's office, the same doctor's office. They called in my care plan, and a fire really started in me because I had the tools for self-advocacy, but there are so many people who do not. And it was that experience that pushed me forward to becoming a birth doula myself, after stumbling across a doula board that in that evening made me feel more seen, heard, included, warm. And I didn't have the words then, but really I just wanted to feel better. And it was not about medically feeling better. It was about feeling better emotionally. And I decided to start Poppy Seed Health mainly for people just like me. When you want that one-on-one, on-demand attention and kind of expert anonymity that you would not get anywhere else. And at Poppy, we want to be where the people are. And I thought, you can't be where I am right now because I'm sitting on my couch crying, right? But with technology, you can. And so that's what we've built at Poppy Seed. And because of my own experiences, my own life experiences as a Black woman who has spent my adult years on every side of insurance, having very good private insurance, having no insurance whatsoever, and also having marketplace insurance while I've been on this journey to parenthood, I can tell you where every single gaps are firsthand, serving my own clients as a doula. And so I know exactly where we need to fix things with simple innovation first, and where we need those accessibility points. So Poppy Seed, we have, many people are aware of, like Warby Parker or Tom's. There are a lot of companies that have our business model. We are bold. We built it into the business model before I hired one person. We take a dollar amount from every member every month, and we funnel that back into giving our exact telehealth services to Medicaid folks and folks who are on the spectrum of subsidized insurance. And that is very important to us. So that's my story, and that's where we are with Poppy today. And we're very, very excited to be able to get our first product to market.
So exciting. We can't wait.
I can't either.
I'm going to hold off my comments because I want us to keep moving so everybody gets to hear everybody's story. Ashlee, and then we'll go to Nathalie and then Dr. Fraser.
Awesome. So my founder story is that I've worked in healthcare my entire career. I was working for an academic medical center, and the long and short of it was the department that I was working in was a very toxic work environment, as many Black people who worked in academic medical centers can probably attest to. And so my experience there, just seeing how insidious institutional racism is within some of our leading, most prominent health systems, while also pursuing my MPH, I was reading paper after paper after paper and seeing the poor health outcomes for Black women. And quite frankly, I got pissed. I was just like, I felt like I was privileged to be in this setting, have access to these academic papers, and thought, my God, I don't think your everyday average Black woman really understands how dire this situation is. And what can I do to take this information out of the ivory tower, make it more culturally relevant to Black women, and also not be fear-mongering, but empower them as they're navigating a healthcare system that, quite frankly, was not designed with them in mind. And so the idea started off with, really just creating a community around health education, making health content more culturally relevant to Black women, centering their lived experiences and making the connections between our social and cultural context and how that ultimately impacts our health outcomes. Did a really good job at building out that community, but had this bigger vision of supporting Black women with finding providers, culturally aligned and culturally sensitive providers, as well as a community for support. So our North Star is Health in Her Hue is going to be using data insights. The women using our platform will complete surveys, and we will personalize their experience and make recommendations to clinicians, to content, as well as community support groups within the platform. But ultimately, I'll share a bit about my personal experience. I was working in that toxic environment, was breaking out in hives as a result of it. Went to an allergist who was a white woman. She was a great doctor, I would say, but she was running a bunch of tests on me to see what was causing the hives. I wasn't allergic to anything. And it never dawned on me to share with this white woman that I was working in a toxic work environment, and I was dealing with microaggressions and seeing racism within an academic medical center. And I looked at that experience in comparison to my experience with my Black doctor, who actually happens to be on on the line right now. I'm revealing my patient relationship with you, Dr. Fraser. But I remember my great experience having a Black gynecologist and seeing how much I shared with her. I talk about brunch, I talk about relationships, and I just saw the difference between how much I shared with my Black provider in comparison to this white woman. And I thought, if this allergist was a Black woman, I probably would have shared that I was dealing with the stress of working in this toxic environment. She probably would have not prescribed me 2 Allegras every day and would have gotten to the root of the issue. And so that is the crux of Health in Her Hue. The actual name, HUES, actually stands for Health in Her Heard and Understood Experiences. And what we really want to do is connect Black women to providers who will take their social and cultural context in consideration as they're providing care to them. And so that's a bit about my story.
Okay, I didn't know that HUE stood for something else. Okay, I'm learning a lot today. So interesting. I'm gonna keep quiet. Nathalie and then Dr. Fraser, please.
So actually did not start Expectful. Expectful was started by a white male. His name is Mark Krasner, and he's a fantastic human. I think probably unlike Ocean, he actually saw the value of having diverse representation at the helm. And so what happened to me, and the reason why I decided to come on to Expectful, was I had a very rough pregnancy as a Black woman. During my 20-week ultrasound, I found out that I was at high risk for placental challenges. And I mean, to me, this just came as such a shock because like, I am such a health junkie, and like I was in perfect condition before this 20-week scan. I felt great. And then all of a sudden I'm being told that if I'm not careful, I could lose my child at any day. And it was really at that point in my pregnancy that I was just constantly reminded that I am a Black woman and I'm being treated differently. When I asked for resources, I asked, what can I do to ensure a good outcome? The feedback that I got was, placental challenges are more common with Black women. That's the only thing that I got. Not like, here's what you can do. It was just kind of, I was met with, it is what it is. And really the advice that I got from my doctors was, it was really abysmal. And my husband, who is a Stanford educated lawyer, would spend maybe 10, 15 hours before some of my OB appointments, just printing out study after study, highlighting information so that he could be educated and have a fruitful conversation with a doctor, because they just assumed that we were just incompetent. And it was definitely one of the most frustrating experiences that I've had in my life. And just being a Black woman going through pregnancy caused me so much stress. And the stress, obviously, if you have a high risk pregnancy, if you're at risk for preterm labor, that doesn't help. In fact, it only worsens it. And so I was super fortunate, even though I've had a meditation practice for many years. When I was in my third trimester, I discovered this app, Expectful, and I started using Expectful, and I got really into hypnobirthing. And just despite the chaos that I had to deal on a pretty much daily basis, because I had about 4 to 5 doctor's appointments a week. Like I was just always going to the hospital for the non-stress test and all of the tests. Even though I was in that environment, using Expectful and getting into these meditations allowed me to achieve a calm that I didn't know was possible. And it also helped me get to term, because within a week of getting into Expectful and taking this mindfulness practice, I was able to stabilize. And for me, that was a life-changing impact, because it gave me, a Black woman, a tool to just stay calm amidst all of the racism that I was facing during my pregnancy. And really what happened was that, my son and I, we made it out. It was definitely a rough delivery and a rough start, but we made it out okay. And during my maternity leave, I came across this opportunity to advise Expectful. And given that it had just had a huge impact on my life, I thought, sure, why not? And it was really in that relationship that I formed with the founder, where I was able to take my experience as a Black woman and everything that I went through, and then come on to Expectful and actually create a much bigger vision to address a much larger need. I mean, Expectful started as a meditation and sleep app, and we are growing that vision really because of the experience I had. So a different founder story, but I feel fortunate that I can use my experience to have a greater impact.
I love it. That is so powerful. I mean, there are different ways that we get here. Also, it sounds like you need to leave an Irth review, but we'll get to that later. All right. Just want to tell all the folks that we are going to be taking question and answers in a few minutes. So if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll listen to Dr. Frazier. Tell us how you came into this work. Well, we know you're a physician, but the other side, because you already had a job and have a job.
I've had multiple jobs, and I still have multiple jobs. I think, so I knew that I wanted to be a physician probably since I was 13 or 14. I grew up in Trinidad, and so you kind of have to figure things out like really early in the British system. So it was always the goal. And when I came here for college, that was the goal, go to medical school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I did not want to be an OBGYN. That was off the list. And I was just like, too much liability, too much, that just doesn't sound fun. And I tell people, I kind of have a series of aha moments in life. It was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to be a doctor. Okay, that's it. You can't convince me otherwise. That's it. I know. And then in medical school, kind of like not knowing, waiting for third and fourth year when you do rotations. It was like the end of the second year, and we went in systems, reproductive health system. I don't even know what we were talking about, but there were some people, I think they were gynecologists at this in the front of the class, and I can't remember what they were speaking about. And I think I always had a passion for mentoring young women and just sort of encouraging women, kind of like knowing my personality, my story, just, we all have our own internal stories that we tell ourselves when we grow up and that we overcome that others may not see. And being an introvert and just, moving here by myself, like all of that, kind of just wanting to just kind of like show people like me who are sort of like unassuming, and that, these things can happen and you can just, you know what I mean? Like you can just, whatever you want to do, you can do, just find your purpose. And I think I was just sitting in class, but I always thought it would be separate. Like I'm going to just, be a doctor, and then I'm going to people are just going to be inspired because I'm a doctor. And I was just sitting in this class and they were talking about something reproductive health. And I just had an aha moment. It's like, oh, I think I'm supposed to be an OBGYN because this makes sense. And at the time I was thinking more of like pediatric gynecology. I'm like, teens get pregnant. That's great. I'll be able to this whole thing. So did the whole OBGYN residency. My whole thing was like, yep, I'm going to go get a job. I just want to be employed. I don't have to think about who's paying for the light bill. I don't want to think about anything. I'm just going to do this. And so joined a small private practice in Westchester thinking, these are some nice people. I'm an introvert, so I need everybody to be calm, nobody to be yelling at me. I don't want no stress. I thought, there was my boss was a Black woman. This is perfect. There were other Black women, all great. And it was just horrible because it was just, horrible is probably a strong word, but it was in the right environment for me. I felt that there were things that we did just because it was easier, decisions that weren't necessarily harmful, but weren't necessarily right either, in terms of this is what we do as a practice. This is what we do, certain type, how we do hysterectomies. We don't do VBACs. We don't do a whole lot of things that, it might not, at that time, I'm like, oh, I trained at, Westchester Medical, where, we saw the worst of the worst from everywhere, everything. So it was just what do you mean? This is not a big deal. And just also feeling underappreciated, overworked. I took a job where I wasn't making as much as I could have because I just wanted to be comfortable. I don't want no drama, whatever. And it was just stressful. I was working, covering too many hospitals. And in the midst of that, I just felt like, okay, I'm not happy. I feel like I'm not getting to do everything that I need to do for my patients. I feel like there is better out there and I want to create better. And I think that was my first crazy moment when I was like, yeah, I'm just going to be my own boss. I'm going to be an entrepreneur 1 year out of residency. And so that's when I started my first company, Trinity Medical Care in Harlem, which I ran for almost 5 years, where I just wanted to create experiences for women where I feel like I'm a normal person. And if people meet me, normal me, then they will not be so afraid to go to the doctor. Like Ashlee said, I literally, because I'm at work all day, I talk to my patients about everything. Let me tell you what my niece did today, because this is just and I just have normal conversations with normal people. But the difficulty with that is that I was doing everything. I was doctor, I was boss, I was HR, I was everything, and I was burnt out. And plus I had a part-time job because I needed to pay the bills. Entrepreneurs know you got to have the job on the side if you're going to eat, right? So along the way, one of my friends from residency introduced me to Crystal, who's our founder and our CEO, my co-founder and CEO. And at that time she had founded Clit Health, which was a product which was allowing women to have text-based interactions with clinicians. And it was at the beginning stages, and my friend was like, oh yeah, you need to talk to Candace. She wanted someone to, like, you know what I mean? And she went to my friend's like, I'm not about that life, but that girl is. And so she was in California and we would talk. And one time she came to New York, and, you know, I was just like telling her like all the things that I can imagine. I'm like a fixer, and I can see a problem, and I may not be able to, you know, 100% execute it, but I can see the potential and the possibilities and these, oh my gosh. And we just, you know, and so I moved from like, hey, just shooting the breeze to like becoming more of an advisor, and then more in a co-founder role. And then, you know, with launching Clit, and then that we launched. And then in deciding our next steps at the end of 2019, wanting to go into telemedicine, we kind of were trying to find the right niche, and coming based off of Crystal's story, she had a health experience in college that actually led her to founding our company. We decided to focus on women in colleges and universities because it's just a very untapped market. And I have a passion for like education. Like, I just feel if you know what's right and you have the information, and you believe the information, you're able to make decisions. And it's my responsibility to give you that information and give it to you in a way that you can understand. And so it's sort of like this catch 'em young situation where it's like, if I give you a good health experience at your beginning of adulting, then maybe when you leave, you will continue to look for good health experiences, and you would trust clinicians, and you would know what to look for, and you wouldn't show up to me like 5 years since your last appointment, or 10 years later, or when you're pregnant and there's, we're kind of like beyond the 8 ball. And so we kind of rebranded as Kira to be a little bit more everybody friendly, moving from Clit Health to Kira, realizing we wanted to get into the college and university space. COVID kind of threw a wrench in that last year as we were launching, but it was great because we got to like really raise funds and build our company. And now we're, launched in California and New York, and we have, schools in California to on board, and we can basically practice in probably a total of 25 other states. So, and it is in the app store. It's a direct to consumer app now, so anyone can get telemedicine services, but also, colleges, focusing specifically on, underrepresented populations. Like, our goal is to have multicultural for the clinicians on the platform, so you have choice. A lot of times we don't have choice. My insurance plan says I have to see X doctor, or this hospital that I go to has these doctors, or even in a college campus, there's one nurse practitioner that's been there for 20 years, and that's your choice from 9 to 3 p.m. and there's no other option. Like, here's a list of people, choose who you want to see and see them on your schedule and on your time. And so that's kind of my interaction with Kira, me seeing like, oh, great, I have an opportunity to fix something. Great. Like, I'm bored. Let's do it.
I love it. And I really like Clit. It really got my attention. I remember that. I was like, ooh, okay, I'm going to pay attention to this.
A lot of potential investors didn't like it.
Right. But again, I'm not the target audience for the funding piece. So I totally understand. All right, before we move into questions, I just want to do a quick round. So much love in the chat. So much love for Whitney breastfeeding, baby Elijah. Because that's what we do, and we're bringing that back too. So thank you for being a demonstration of Black mothering. So a quick round, right? The greatest joy of being a founder in this space and the greatest challenge, right? Your greatest joy and your greatest challenge. You got to give me like one word or one sentence for each. Your greatest joy and your greatest challenge. Since I'm throwing it out there, I'll start to give you guys a second. I would say my greatest joy is when people say, particularly around Irth, oh my God, we really need this. This is so important to me. Thank you for making this. The greatest challenge is a number of them. Let me pick which one. I mean, certainly funding is a challenge. We are a nonprofit. We are grant funded. And that's a whole different thing that I'm actually, happy that we went that route. It has its own challenges. But, certainly how we grow and build in this environment is a challenge and a concern, and thinking about when you see all those numbers about how many Black women get VC funding, when you see, the numbers about women in general, and then that we're a smaller piece of that, that's a concern. And that's an issue. Oh, I didn't take my own rule and keep it to one sentence. So Kimberly's on a timeout. All right. I'm going around. I'm gonna go to Nathalie next. Greatest joy and greatest challenge.
Sure. My greatest joy is helping other women, and just seeing and hearing their feedback about how our product helps them in just such a deep way when they need it. So that's my greatest joy. My biggest challenge is being a venture-backed company, just the growth that you sign up for. I just closed my fundraising round, but it's like you have to hit certain milestones on a quick timeline. And so that adds a bit of stress that I don't think anyone really enjoys.
That is totally fair. Okay, popcorn to Ashlee.
Yeah, my greatest joy, echoing Nathalie, is again just like the feedback that we get from women on those days when you have those lows and you're feeling discouraged or overwhelmed. Getting the DMs or getting tagged in posts, seeing women talk about their great experiences with providers that they found in the platform. It's that fuel that's like, you're onto something, keep building. Challenge, I won't even talk about fundraising, but I would say the biggest challenge is I'm like a creative visionary. Like I have 1,000,001 ideas brewing in my mind at any given time, but having to be laser focused on solving one thing, getting that right, and evolving. Because I see the North Star that I have for Health and Hue, and I'm excited to get there, but just having to be laser focused and staying focused on that journey to that evolution is a challenge for me as a creative, as a visionary, as someone who just wants to do all of the things.
Mm-hmm. I hear you for doing all the things. Speaking of creative and visionary, I'm gonna popcorn to Whitney because she's always got 1,000 ideas.
I know, I was thinking that sounds just like me right now. So the greatest joy is the opportunity to rebrand really Black Birth. So just thinking about it, I think of randomly Soul Train, like just the energy mixed with like the old school posters that you would see in salons of Black women with fros, like combining that together, that's Black birth, that's Black maternal health. So that makes me happy. And then the greatest challenge I personally experience right now is how slow traditional healthcare is on this. And that it's at a point where it's like, you either use my energy to help y'all dismantle something or create on my own. And I'm in the create on my own, apologize later.
Right? That's what they say. It's easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. All right, Simmone, how about you? Greatest joy, greatest challenge?
Sure. So my greatest joy is creating something that I would use for myself. I think that's really important. Not only that, I have a second joy, and that is having a team that reflects and mirrors those that we are serving every day. We have not just a diverse team in background and ethnicity and all of those things, but in socioeconomic background, in their abilities. And that's really important because of everyone that we're serving on the other line with Poppy Seed Health. I would say my biggest challenge, so I like to think about things in the moment. And at the moment, my biggest challenge is I actually don't think I'm being a great friend and partner because I am building a company, a tech company at that. And so those like really vulnerable moments that I'm sharing with all these strangers here is that it doesn't allow for, when you're building a baby, it really doesn't allow for me to be probably the best not probably, the best friend and definitely the best partner. But the other side of that is hopefully those life lessons and the learnings that I'm, learning now, especially while I'm building. It just allows me to think so much more about my time. And I think that's the biggest thing, is like the challenge in time and how you're going to use it. But anyway, sorry, friends, sorry, boyfriend, but it'll get better. In the moment, that's the challenge.
Yes, well, it does get better. And I think acknowledging it is the most important part, right? Being able to say it, name it, and then you can potentially try to do something about it. Appreciate the honesty, Simmone. Dr. Frazier, quick popcorn to you. Greatest joy, greatest challenge?
Greatest joy is things working, seeing people, one, either, having a college administrator like catch the vision and sign on, and then also seeing women and students like interact and use the product. We had a couple great Black presidents, college presidents in California, men who were like, oh my gosh, this is, like really catch the vision that, yeah, I want to offer this to women, while other people are like, why is it only for women? And like, that was just like, oh my God, like they get it. And then I think my greatest challenge is that I am not a great salesperson. I'm not good at selling things and having to convince people that this is good, or this is great, or this is, a good investment, and having to do those kinds of things is a challenge. Like, I would just give everything away for free if I could. And I think that's a struggle for me, and having to do that part of being an entrepreneur. And also, like a lot of you were saying, I literally have 3 jobs and I'm doing an MBA. And so doing all of that and, like kind of Simmone was saying, and just staying sane is kind of like, being the whole entrepreneur. But I have co-founder, I have other people. That's the great thing when you're not doing it by yourself, is that other people are there to kind of complete you when you're not able to do everything.
Yes, and having that team that you can trust and go to, that has just been invaluable to me as well. I want to get to some of these questions because as we lost track of time. Okay, so this question is from Leslie. She's a senior computer science major attending Howard University. Okay, HBCUs, all right. She's asking, one thing she's noticed is that a lot of research does not turn into tangible products or services or actual impact, or the products or services are not sustainable for a number of reasons. Considering the number of founders on the panel, do you have any advice for me in regards to turning my future research into a tangible product and making sure it is impactful and sustainable? Well, I mean, I will start saying, first you have to answer impactful to whom, right? So who are you seeking to serve? Is it meant to be impactful to clinicians and physicians, or is it meant to be impactful to everyday folks? There are different parts of the ecosystem that you can target. And so kind of identifying who you want to create for is always the first step. I'm going to pause there because I saw Whitney reaching for her unmute.
I did. Yeah, this is a great question. And going into human-centered design as well. So I'm just going to give it to you straight. When you're creating, and especially doing it from a human-centered perspective, you still may find that people will not accept that as valid data. However, at least with my focus on qualitative data, the people that you would think who would listen to our hospitals are like, oh, qualitative data doesn't make sense to us. We can't quantify it enough for our bottom line. You keep going because you realize in those stories from a design perspective that you're actually hearing and seeing things that traditional healthcare or traditional systems are missing. So if you approach your research with the understanding of I'm getting nuggets that a lot of other people in certain places of power just would not understand, and just see yourself as reverse engineering basically what people are painting people or people need, you'll find yourself, I mean, basically you're being a pioneer, especially in this space. You're starting something that just people won't catch up to maybe for another couple of years. So I say keep going.
Can I add on to that quickly? It's a little anecdotal story. So last year I said to someone, about 700 women, actually probably a little bit more, or more than we know, died from preventable maternal health care, Black women primarily. And the person said, only 700? And then I brought the stat that, okay, well, look at the United States, the most developed country in the world, and we have the worst maternal mortality crisis. And that person heard it completely different. My point is that data and research primarily is also about really good storytelling and how you're putting that data and research into the larger story and also targeting who you are solving for. So just remember that, and yes, keep going.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to skip to this one because I think this is in line, then we'll come back. Can you talk about how you tested your idea to know it would resonate and could be sustainable? How are we testing ideas? Ashlee, you want to start on that one?
Sure, because I have quite the story. So for 2 years, I've been building the community of health at Earth. You always knew that I had like this tech play that I wanted to build into the experience, but I'm not an engineer, so I did what I could. So I would just say for anyone who's trying to build something, start with what you can do and figure out the rest over time. But we had a really engaged community. I was hearing from women that I was asking them a bunch of questions. That's the benefit of having an engaged community. You can learn from them. And so I had a hunch. I'm like, Black women in my personal network are looking for connections to Black providers, and we're relying on our personal networks to get those referrals and recommendations. So what if I built this product that made it easier for Black women to find culturally aligned providers? And I'm not a technologist, so I used a no-code solution platform, worked with 6 doctors who I'd been working with on developing content and had them be the first shining faces on the platform. Took a screen grab of that at 12 a.m. one night, and I just pushed it out into the universe. Those doctors were like, Ashlee, it doesn't have to be beautiful, just push it out, you gotta do it. And I leaned into that, I did that, and the community responded very overwhelmingly positive. Like they shared it with, it went viral, or just to call it what it is, it went viral, and there was a rallying cry for more Black doctors to sign. And so that was sign up. And so that was a very, I didn't pay much for that platform. I didn't do much. It wasn't super sexy, but I pushed it out and saw how people responded to that. And now that gave me enough information. I have enough engagement to now iterate and evolve that experience over time. So I would say, just keep it simple, test out one thing, see what works, and learn from what you push out.
Anybody else want to jump in on testing real quick?
I think you're going to learn, like everyone has said, entrepreneurship is basically seeing a need and developing, trying to fill that need in the best way that you can. And there's no way to 100% know what are people going to buy on. And you listen to your customer, you listen to what the basis of why you're trying to do what you do, and you grow. There's no overnight solution. Sometimes you have to scratch and start over. Sometimes you have to regroup. Sometimes you have to join with other people. It's a long journey. So I wish there was a way just to know what's going to just work like that. And, but it's just a matter of if it's something you're passionate about, you just do it because you have to do it.
And I just want to add that when I started seeking grant funding, I had this whole vision to build Irth literally in the community, right? Like we weren't going to do anything until we went to 5 cities and we were testing ideas, and all of this blew apart with the pandemic. But, the ways that for me, if you're testing a product that, that is for the people, you got to put it out there with the people who you're trying to create for and see what they think. Do they even think it's necessary? Start with some surveying, try to really get to your intended audience and customer as soon as you can from ideation to even know if this is, you can get a valid concept going, and then keep asking questions, and then go from there. So that was really helpful for us. Okay.
Oh, Kimberly, can I just say one thing? I was just going to say, look up the mom test. It's so easy read. It's like you can read it in an hour or two. The mom test, if you're trying to validate an idea, is where I would go.
Excellent. Thank you, Whitney. Okay, I'm going to combine these last two questions into one. Someone is creating a wearable product related to lactation, woohoo! But talking about the need for more diverse teams, and she wants to be more intentional, to have more diversity on her teams. What is the best advice for really trying to find folks? And then the last question is here, one of the greatest lessons that we've learned that have either set you back along your entrepreneurial journey or benefited you. Okay, those aren't the same. So let's start quickly with building more diverse teams. This was certainly a challenge in this space. I was determined to try to get an all Black and brown team. People like, it can't be done. I'm proud that our iOS developer, our Android developer, our visual UX designer, our product manager are all Black femmes. And so this is really, really important. It takes a lot of work. It was about networking, trying to find these groups. Apparently there are Slack channels for everything. You just got to ask a lot of people, go to the Bay Area and get involved there because they seem to have a great cluster of Black folks in tech. It was a lot of work. More work than I've put into finding anything. So getting connected to people who are in these spaces and asking them to share within their trusted networks was a big part of that. Anyone else want to jump in on some other tips for finding more people in this space on the tech side?
So there's number one, there's definitely not a pipeline issue. So I just want to say that these people, there are just lots of them. So we're looking for PMs, Black product management groups on Slack. There's a really great Black designer community called Where Are the Black Designers on Slack. There's also Black UXers on Black women UXers or something, user experience designers on Facebook. All of that to say, Ashlee and Kimberly, there are just groups out there where all of these extremely talented people live and are having constant conversations and or looking for their next gig. So I just see so many. There is no pipeline issue.
100%.
And I was going to add really quickly, there's only a pipeline issue if you're looking for a certain level of pedigree from the Black and brown people that you're trying to recruit. So as we think about diversity and inclusion, it should also be about people who got educated in schools that may not be the Stanfords and the Harvards. And so I'm thinking about that as I'm hiring too. Our software engineer, amazing, but I feel like VCs and a lot of folks in the industry are looking for certain name brands, and that is creating a barrier into the pool of talent that you're making yourself open to. So that's what I wanted to add.
And lastly, I'll say also that you have to be passionate about building relationships. You know, we need what we need in a hire like yesterday, but so much of what you're doing is building a relationship with that person, and also understanding that there is a level of ambiguity and flexibility, especially if you're just starting off and building, right? And so it's kind of like dating, right? You want to build a relationship with that person and make sure that you're able to get them on board with your vision, not just the product that you're building, which is super important, because I can promise you that product is going to change. The vision probably won't, but the product definitely will. So just be gentle with yourself, especially with finding the right people to join you. Make sure that you also know where you are on your journey too.
Okay. And does one or two of us want to share greatest lessons we've learned that have either set you back along your entrepreneurial journey or benefited you? Greatest lesson learned that's either set you back along your entrepreneurial journey or benefited you? Anything come to mind for anyone?
For
I'll
me,
just say really. Oh,
Oh,
go ahead, Kim. No, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Fraser.
I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna say the same thing for both. I like people. Like no man is an island, and I tend to just be in my own little world, and I want to fix it, and I want to fix it now. And doing things by myself, that's really hard and didn't work. And having a team in across the board in everything that I'm doing, all my entrepreneur stuff, is so much different and so much better. And there's room for all of us. So share, collaborate, and do it together. And I would think, that's what I would say is like my biggest lesson.
Crystal, say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm joining very late at the tail end, but hi.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, so hi, my name is Crystal Evuleocha. I'm CEO and co-founder of Cura Health. You just heard from my wonderful co-founder and my teammate, Dr. Candace Fraser. So she might have introduced what we do already, but we're a telemedicine company for young women, and we work with colleges and universities to support them and provide the care they need, from primary care, OBGYN, and mental health services. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, she's been singing your praises. She's definitely doing holding it down. All right, so we were trying to answer this last question. Greatest lessons we've learned, either that have set you back along your entrepreneurial journey or benefited you. Set you back or benefited you. I feel like there's more lessons that have benefited me. So many lessons. Ooh, I'm gonna say the most important lesson I've learned in this whole process has been to kind of build a team that you trust, and, for me as a journalist by trade coming into the tech space, I'm not a tech person. And so having people that I could trust around decisions, who were aligned with the vision, who understood how important it is and were committed to what we were doing, was just incredibly important, because I'm literally relying on them a lot for a skill set and a knowledge base that I don't have. And so, that importance of having the right people was something that I, learned sometimes the hard way. But it's an important lesson around, having that team there to support you. And now it is benefiting me, but along the way it was like, woo, that was a tough lesson to learn. So anyone else try to think of something and a lesson? Go ahead, Whitney.
Yeah, well, he's kind of quiet. Okay, I was thinking, being a mom, that there has been these ebbs and flows that have been really challenging in this tech world. Tech is like click, run and get it out, go man. And I've had to be okay with the slow and steady longer than I like. And but I've also learned in the slow and steady that I've seen things that I'm not sure that I would have if I had done the traditional tech roadmap. So I think that's the thing that has been most challenging, but also most rewarding for me.
Excellent. I love that. Well, I'm going to close us out with a question. And this is the question that I ask at the end of my podcast to all my guests, because I think it's really about reclamation and what we're all trying to do in terms of putting power back in people's hands, centering people's experiences, really thinking about how we can level this playing field and create more access via digital tools. I mean, all of that is part of the work. All of that is what Whitney talks about, this vision of rebranding Black birth, right? And it's not the woe is me and all the constant doom and gloom, but that there is also another story emerging, right? And we are all a part of that. And I'm so proud that we all are a part of that, which is creating tools, a part of the thing, not the thing, but a part of the things that need to be done, because it's going to take all the things. And so my question to each of you, as you think about this time that we're in, is about our birthright, right? What is our birthright, and what should be the birthright of Black women and birthing people in this process? Anyone want to jump in?
I'm just going to quickly say joy. That it shouldn't have to be trauma, that birth should bring joy. And right now, as a Black woman, I associate birth with fear, and that I have a lot of resentment towards that. I want the narrative to change, and I want it to be joy. I think that that's our birthright.
I love it.
Yeah, I can chime in with that. I think one very important thing that's lacking, specifically like right now in the US, of what I've seen as an immigrant, is support. And feeling seen, as a woman when you give birth. I think, a traditional thing that we do back home in Nigeria is after you give birth, you have like mothers and women who come and live with you for like the first month. And that is something, even if my mother still lived in Nigeria, she would come to the US and do. And a lot of people, don't have that and will never experience that. And that's where, having a support system makes sense, and having sisterhood. So sisterhood and support, I believe it is in its way a birthright. And, we shouldn't feel afraid to reach out for help and support and, just doing it alone. We're not born to be alone. So, we're born to have community, no man's own island. I mean, we say this all the time, but in practice, we should have community around us supporting us in what we're going through. So.
I love that. Anyone else want to chime in? Go ahead, Whitney.
I think so. Our birthright is to connect and undermine what other people thought they knew about us with ease. That we just show up, show out, and do it the way we have foundations of Black, not only people birthing here, but midwives who care for us. Like, we have strong roots and foundation, even here in the States. And so we can't be ignored.
I love that. Community is vital, kind of raising it up. I hope you get to listen to Whitney's podcast episode where she talks about her blackity black birth. That's a direct quote. It is just so powerful, like what is possible when you have community, when you have support, when you have that what you need. I am just so excited. I could talk to these ladies all night, really I could, but I want to honor everyone's time. I want to thank everyone for taking time out of the evening to share space with me, to support Irth, and as we start off our journey in the real world and out of the womb of my head. So I really am grateful for learning from you all, from being in sisterhood, being in foundership, whatever it's called, with you all, and being able to learn and grow from you. I want to remind everyone who's listening to make sure that you are following Expectful. Please make sure you are following Poppy Seed Health, even though Simmone says she's a newbie to the platforms. Please follow the Renee. Please follow Kira Health. Please follow Health in Her Hue. Please follow the Irth app. We are working for our community and to change this narrative. And we are honored to have you with us and to be building with us. Don't forget, on the 14th, we'll be having an important conversation about police brutality and the impact on Black mothers with Diamond Reynolds. For those who choose to come, we actually will have a chorus of maternal grief fan. It's from Derek Forger's exhibit that really honors the mothers who have lost children to police violence. And so we're excited that he has donated these fans and we'll be giving them out to attendees. So we're super excited about that. Make sure you stay up to date. Check out earthapp.com. Thank you all so much for joining us. Any last words, everyone, before we say goodnight to these great people? Everybody good? All right. Thank you so much for being in conversation. I appreciate you all. Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
Bye.